On October 13, 1972, a small aircraft carrying 45 people took off from Montevideo, Uruguay, heading towards Santiago, Chile. Among the passengers were members of the Old Christians Club rugby team, their friends, family members, and crew. For them, the journey across the Andes Mountains was supposed to be a simple flight before a weekend of excitement in Chile. The aircraft, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, began crossing one of the most dangerous mountain ranges on Earth. The Andes were massive, unpredictable, and filled with hidden dangers. As the plane approached Chile, bad weather began to close in. Thick clouds surrounded the aircraft, making it difficult for the pilots to judge their exact position. Believing they had already passed over the mountains, the pilots began descending, but they were still surrounded by the towering peaks of the Andes. Suddenly, the passengers felt the aircraft violently shake. The plane struck the mountainside, tearing off parts of its wings and tail before crashing into a remote snowy valley. When the survivors opened their eyes, they found themselves trapped at more than 11,000 feet above sea level, surrounded by freezing temperatures and endless snow. The crash killed many passengers instantly, while the remaining survivors faced a nightmare they could never have imagined. They were alone in one of the most unforgiving places on Earth, with no shelter, almost no supplies, and no idea if anyone would ever find them. After the crash, the survivors realized their situation was far worse than they could have imagined. They were stranded in the middle of the Andes Mountains, thousands of feet above sea level, surrounded by freezing temperatures, powerful winds, and endless snow. Inside the broken aircraft, the survivors tried to create some form of shelter. They used pieces of the plane to block the freezing air and wrapped themselves in whatever clothing and materials they could find. But the biggest problem was food. The passengers had only a small amount of supplies from the plane, and within days, they began running out. Hunger slowly became their greatest enemy. At first, they believed rescuers would find them quickly. Search teams from several countries looked across the mountains, but the white landscape made the wreckage almost impossible to spot. After days of searching, authorities eventually stopped the rescue mission. The world believed there were no survivors left. When the survivors heard that the search had ended, their hope began to disappear. They realized they were completely alone. With starvation becoming unavoidable, they faced one of the hardest decisions imaginable. To survive, they made the painful choice to use the bodies of those who had died in the crash as food. Then, just when they thought their situation could not get worse, an avalanche buried the wreckage, killing more survivors and trapping the remaining group inside the plane. Despite everything they had lost, the survivors refused to give up. They continued fighting against the cold, hunger, and fear, determined to stay alive. After more than 2 months trapped in the Andes, the survivors knew that waiting for rescue was no longer an option. Their supplies were almost gone, and they understood that if they stayed at the crash site, they would eventually die. Someone had to leave the wreckage and search for help. 2 survivors, Nando Pardu and Roberto Canessa, decided to take on the impossible mission. They believed there had to be civilization somewhere beyond the mountains. Before leaving, they prepared themselves as best they could. They made makeshift clothing from materials they found in the wreckage and carried only a small amount of food. The journey ahead was almost unimaginable. They had to climb through some of the highest and most dangerous parts of the Andes with no proper equipment, no map, and very little strength left in their bodies. Every step was a battle against freezing temperatures, exhaustion, and the fear that they might never make it back. For days, they climbed higher and higher through the mountains. They crossed glaciers, slept in the snow, and pushed forward even when their bodies begged them to stop. After several days, they reached a mountain peak expecting to see green valleys and signs of civilization on the other side. Instead, they looked out and saw even more mountains stretching into the distance. But turning back was not an option. They continued walking for over 10 days, surviving on determination alone. Finally, their impossible journey changed when they spotted a man on horseback near a river. The man was a Chilean farmer named Sergio Catalan. Although they could barely communicate at first, Catalan realized they were survivors from the missing plane. He immediately rode for help. Their discovery would finally bring rescue to the people still trapped high in the Andes. After 72 days trapped in the freezing Andes Mountains, the impossible finally happened. Thanks to the courage of Nando Pardu and Roberto Canessa, rescuers were finally able to locate the crash site and reach the survivors who had been fighting to stay alive. On December 22, 1972, helicopters arrived in the mountains and began the dramatic rescue operation. Because of the dangerous terrain, only some survivors could be taken out on the first day. The remaining survivors spent one final night in the mountains before being rescued the following day. When the world learned that 16 people had survived for more than 2 months in one of the harshest environments on Earth, the story shocked millions. However, their survival also brought controversy. Many people struggled to understand the difficult decisions the survivors made to stay alive. The survivors explained that they were not trying to disrespect those who had died. They were simply fighting to survive when they had no other choice. Over the years, the Andes plane crash became one of the most famous survival stories in history. It showed the strength of the human spirit, the power of teamwork, and the will to survive against impossible odds. The story of the 1972 Andes crash continues to inspire people around the world, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, hope can still survive. If you reach this far in the video, I want you to like, subscribe, and share. Also comment down below what type of videos you want to see next video.